Hi, my name is Sio, and I want to take you on an adventure into one of infinite dimensions, walled off yet connected by the warp. In this dimension, events that would be familiar to us are changed in the slightest ways, cascading out of control, yet ultimately leading to a horrifying event known as the Angel Apostasy. In this video, we will be going over what will happen to one of the Emperor's most controversial, yet undeniably effective sons. Primarch of the 13th, ruler of the host, the Battle King, the victorious Grandpappy Smurf, master of the 500 worlds of Ultramar, Roboute motherf***ing Guilliman! What could one small change do to make this straight as an arrow Boy Scout of a Primarch change his ways? Let's find out. But first, if you end up enjoying this video, help me out by hitting like and subscribe. Quite frankly, it's a mix of dopamine when the number go up make my brain feel good, and more importantly, I really like the idea of more people checking out my writing. It hits me right in the Q-zone, you know? Anyway. A primer on the Man in Blue. Unlike his other brothers, who were sent to obscure wastelands and bumfuck nowhere, Roboute was sent to the world of Macragge. It was a refined beast in the grand menagerie of theme park worlds created during the dark age of technology. Among such esteemed worlds like the Viking lands of Fenris, Arrakis of Colchis, or Detroit of Barbarous, Macragge was steeped in the trappings of the Roman Republic/Empire. It had a professional military ruled by consuls, guided by a senate, all berobed in their pastiche glory. He gets flung there through the warp in one of those Frieza attack pods, and mostly unique amongst his brothers, is adopted and raised by two loving and wise parental figures. He thrives under their watch and grows into a wise and benevolent ruler, only with passing troubles like his father figure, one of Macragge's dual consuls, being assassinated under the orders of his consul counterpart. From there, he goes on to lead Macragge to glory, trading with neighboring planets until the Emperor finds him and gives him command of the 13th Legion, the Ultramarines. They quickly spread out, conquering under the Emperor's name and creating a mini sub-empire within the Imperium called the Realm of Ultramar. The opinion of Mr. Roboute is then put on a spectrum from admired to secretly admired to hated by his brothers for numerous offenses, of which I will now list. Having an ego, being humble, having a family, being good at logistics and thus being perceived as a bureaucrat while not being martially inept. Seriously, his brothers can at least feel good about looking down on Lorgar. Every time they shit on Guilliman, it feels like a hard cope. Being an obnoxious fence-sitter, not picking a specialty, and excelling at it. Quickly racking up nearly the most numerous world compliances without having years of a head start, Horus, or having Dark Age of Technology superweapons, Lion. Anyway, back to the context. The Horus Heresy happens. Guilliman gets kidney punched by Lorgar. Nurgle feeds... Just a context, I've been trying to say this line like 10 times, and the phlegm in the back of my nose after I say Nurgle keeps blocking my face. So this is weirdly apropos. Nurgle feeds Zinch the back of the fridge burrito, and the ensuing gas leads to the mother of all warp storms, blocking all communication with the Emperor while Roboute is stuck in Ultramar. Luckily, the Lion and Sanguinius show up, and Guilliman tries to keep the Imperium chugging along by starting the Neo-Imperium with Sang as its head. The Lion is turbo suspicious of Guilliman, seeing as he was so successful at creating Ultramar, and all that power would be tempting to anyone. They eventually make it through the warp storm, get to Terra, and the Emperor is enthroned with Horus being dead. Everything sucks, and Guilliman is still Guilliman, sitting top dog like a giant blue Clifford. Being intelligent, cripplingly autistic, and successful, he figures everyone must obviously do best under his way of doing things, since they clearly work. Well, that and the whole, let's cripple ourselves so we can never hold the gun properly to our heads mentality that he has. Not too later on, he tries to ego lift against his obviously more jacked brother Fulgrim and gets the Primarch equivalent of a herniated disc when they go toe-to-toe and Fulgrim slashes Guilliman's throat open. Guilliman is put in stasis for 10,000 years, blah 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 blah. That's the long and short of what's important here. Now, not to toot my own horn, insert a tooting horn sound effect here. Great. I think the following story for Guilliman is pretty cool, but I need to preface it with a disclaimer. I'm not the most well-read on G-Man. I know there's a decent amount about him, but most of my personal knowledge comes from a Space Marine Codex, Calth, and a bit of 41K onward. So if I'm missing any really interesting or crucial plot points or character points or interesting other side characters that would be crucial and help him thematically grow into the way I'm trying to go, leave it in the comments, because I really appreciate everyone who comments. It makes my day every time I see one. Also, I'm weirdly invested in making these super accurate to the setting and true to the character as I possibly can. Anyway, back to it. There's a lot of obvious ways you can go with Guilliman if you want to steer him away from his normal, traditional lore. You can go with the mini-Imperium angle, have him be a third independent faction, maybe even pulling 1 to 4 other Primarchs with him in greater Ultra Mar Imperium Secunda sort of thing. Maybe have him be more of a schemer. The same way Lorgar fully embraces the schmuck everyone thinks he is, make Guilliman really lean into that schemer role. Guilliman now puts on a persona for each of his brothers. Depending on the brother he's talking to, he'll emphasize parts of himself and de-emphasize other parts of himself, like a real sociopathic guy from Florida, who when he's talking to a guy who speaks Spanish, man, he's Cubano, he speaks fluent Spanish, and he puts his the accent on, or man, when he's talking to a guy from Okeechobee, he'll put on the real southern drawl going on. Or man, when he's talking to a guy from Boynton, or Jupiter, man, he'll speak like he's from the hood. You know what I mean? It's real sick, real gross sort of thing. And that's Guilliman. He's a politician. So anyway, he's doing this for every Primarch, but only have one brother who sees through it. Maybe it's Jagatai Khan or something. He seems like the type of guy to have the keen sense, and people just think, Jagatai Khan is like that with everyone, but he actually really despises and distrusts Guilliman. Thematically would work since he's already the proper color, and then the idea of having Zeech with one of the largest legions, I think it's kind of hilarious. But you would have to fight the urge to not have them implode on themselves, or maybe even literally explode and then have their numbers devastated, sort of the way the Thousand Sons did. Maybe you have sectarian internal wars with splits in doctrine or specialization. Have each one of them claim to be the real Ultramarines, like everyone's claiming to be the real inheritors of the Roman Empire. Have it feed into that. You can go either of those ways, and I'll admit I was tempted, but I had a thought. Who felt offhand, really antithetical to how G-Man is perceived? Sure, Nurgle's stagnation is directly oppositional to Ultramar's growth, but he's not personally happy enough to make the misery it inflicts interesting. I think G-Man is unrightfully perceived as a non-fighter, more of a Lorgar or a Magnus rather than a Leman, Angron, or Ferris. And in many ways it's understandable. He is the logistician. He gets you your field rations, new boots, and clean dry socks. But I'd argue it's far more like Lion or a Fulgrim. Think about his greatest defeats. They come from him going on a rage and striking out. Notably, the aforementioned scuffle with Daemon Fulgrim and his attack on Lorgar, which led to his molly-whopping at the hands of Angron. But to be fair, he put up a formidable fight for who he's perceived to be. Now I think that aspect would be really neat for him to lean into, his rages. Really play up his transient bellicose demeanor and give him time to linger in it. Let him plan and then let him wallow in his feelings of rage as his forces play out in his grand design. This is how it would play out. He lands in Macragge, as usual, and is brought to Connor Guilliman. Roboute learns and grows to a bright prodigy. At the age of 10, because of his skill, Connor still sends him to Illyrium to deal with the Gauls, Savages, French, barbarians, whatever, you get it. But this time, Connor decides to go with him, merely to observe his skill in person and guide him if necessary. Unfortunately for the future Imperium, Connor takes a stray sling-flung rock to the side of the head, killing him instantly. Here is where Roboute's rage blossoms for the first time. He leads savage assaults against the Illyrium people, man, woman, and child, and where once diplomacy stood a real chance, he instead chooses genocide. This prolonged excursion leaves enough time for word of Connor's death to reach back home. As a statesman, Connor was very pro the working man, but Galen, Connor's co-consul, was a man of and for nobility. After the news reaches his ears, he wastes no time and assumes full control over their domain on Macragge. In his short time as sole consul, he diverts the great wealth of Macragge back to the noblemen and swiftly cancels all of Connor's reforms. Soon, Roboute returns and word spreads quickly of his deeds at Illyrium, and even quicker at his rage over Galen's reforms. Galen, no fool to the danger of a potential political rival, even a child, sent an assassin to dispose of Guilliman. Unfortunately for him, the assassin only found Tarasha Etun, the woman who for all intents and purposes is Guilliman's mom. It's unclear if it was his intention to kill her too, or if she put up a fight and died inadvertently. What is known is that she died, and not well. History would one day teach that this very act would be the picking of the most gigantic and exquisite bouquet of oopsie-daisies the galaxy had ever known, because when the now 11-year-old Roboute found her body, something in him changed. Maybe it was losing two parents so relatively quickly. Maybe the Primarchs in them have something about them that really just doesn't deal with their parents well. Maybe Roboute was a mama's boy. Who knows? But the rage that burnt inside him reached a crescendo where it poured over. He was so unimaginably pissed off that he did not need to lash out to release the fury. He was the flame. Every part of his psyche was tilted. So this omni-pissed-off boy conqueror, who was the well-known sire of a widely beloved man of the people, went out into the streets. He rallied common man and soldier alike. He then turned their anguish, resentment, and hate upwards towards those in power. Those people who would see them and theirs languish in poverty and depredation while they reveled in overindulgence, when, all the while, as a whole, they could be filled with righteous honor and achieve wealth and glory undreamed of in the galaxy. Or at least that's what Guilliman told them. He quickly formed a massive mob, stormed the Senate. The near single-handed slaughter of all but Galen would earn him the title of the Mad Titan of Macragge. Galen was saved for a public execution, where Roboute openly workshopped an ever more creative torture methods to match Galen's class's exuberance. Guilliman from here on out would surround himself near solely with generals. Occasionally, he would keep a retainer or two of separate professions to make sure he had up-to-date understanding of the logistics on the ground, but it was all in service of war. While in another world, Roboute's expansion was a natural extension of his wisdom and the grandeur of his rule. This rule was for the sake of expansion. All of the greatness was in service of the bloodshed and the growth. By the time the Emperor finds them, Ultramar is already a sprawling empire, reassuring its logistics to expand again. He sees him, he's impressed, he likes what he sees, and he gives him his legion. He's like, "You do you, son." His son's tactics stay similar, as they're generally as effective as they can be, but their disposition about their use changes. Their drive for honor and glory becomes pathologic. They strive for perfection, not for its own sake like the Emperor's children, but as a means to a bloody end. Decimation squads are instantiated as a form of penal units. Each Marine is passively monitored and constantly scrutinized, both internally themselves and externally by, a commander or someone else. The bottom performing Marines join a rotating decimation squad where they take necessary but mostly fatal assignments. When he met his brothers, he is far tighter, more wound up man than before. Where they may have otherwise met a politician, far more congenial, they instead meet a taciturn, all but grizzled general. He exudes an aura about him, even to his other brothers, like the lion or Horus, but his is sharp and coiled, like a bull waiting for you to get close enough to gore you and then get back to its stable to watch you die. You can feel he is capable of great destruction, but controlled. Ferris and Guilliman speak little to one another. When together, their humors are leveled as they both feel a sense of respect for each other and a strange primal urge, the kind you feel where you want to kill what threatens you. Does that make sense, or does that sound psycho? He doesn't care much for Perturabo nor Conrad Cruz. The former is far too gregarious, and Roboute is almost sickened when he looks upon Perturabo, thinking of the weapon of war he could be. The latter, on the other hand, is more passively annoyed at the time Cruz wastes on civilians, when he could be racking up more compliances. He does not respect Cruz, almost at all, except for his personal martial skill. He sees it, he's not envious, but he just kind of game respects game sort of thing. The compliance of the 1,000 worlds of Ultramar are stable, if not almost stifling. The regimented worlds work like cogs in a galactic spanning machine. Guilliman's methodical and nearly never taken by whims, except when it comes to his legion's armor. It's a source of small japes that the color of his legion is the only thing he's indecisive on, or his sole point of venality. Its original cobalt color becomes shades darker over time with each victory, eventually turning a near black before shifting to a royal purple when they finally overtake the lead for the most compliances. It's played off as a sign of pride at first. They are the Ultramarines, after all. But after a while, the compulsion hits, and the first deeper red or purple is an omen of terrible things to come. As the crusade marches on, Roboute pushes his legion harder, giving less and less time for logistics, all in service of the growing Imperium, Ultramar, and in turn the Legion. The hard boot on the neck of the first rebellion from within Greater Ultramar was a victory that officially transitioned their armor from a purple to a deep red. As they continued at the breakneck speed of their advance, their logistics became more and more brittle as they reached the furthest edges of the galaxy. All of this held together entirely by the skill of the Ultramarines Primarch. Outwardly, it appeared fine. Guilliman had everything under control. But he knew nothing could save the slice of Imperium from crumbling beneath its own weight. Except for a reason to turn inward, a reason for consolidation and to turn their thirsting blades towards a closer, more populous enemy. As I hope it's become exceedingly obvious that the ironically named Ultramarines, in their various shades of red, have fallen to Khorne with their uniquely bloodthirsty and utilitarian means of battle. The massive fractured nature of Ultramar does lead to a spectrum of organizational battle doctrines. Some are wound so tight in the perfection of killing, they forsake their decimation squads altogether, and like clockwork, if they miss one too many shots or perform suboptimally, they immediately take a bolter to the head, for Khorne cares not from where the blood flows, only that it does. Whether it's themselves or their commanding officer is really determined by who can reach their bolter first. Now these wind-up toy soldiers are contrasted by the other end of the spectrum, and on the fringes of the galaxy, where their vigor and eagerness to conquest leads them to act with a wholesale recklessness that would otherwise be totally unacceptable and unbefitting of an Ultramarine. Guilliman's actual fall and potential elevation, if I want to go that route, I'm going to keep a mystery for now. Half because I like the mystery of why until the short story's out, and half because I want to release the other Primarchs and their perspective, relationships to one another, before I make it clear. And the third half, truthfully, because I'm not fully decided on where I want to go with it. I have a couple ideas, but I don't want to make anything set in stone and sort of put that out in the world until I have something I could grab a hold of with my teeth and then extrapolate from there. What do you think about my take on Guilliman and the Angel Apostasy? I think it plays against type in a reasonable and logical way. Was there anything I missed about him or his character? Let me know. The next video will come out far sooner. It's about Dorn. Pretty excited about that. I've been putting him off because I wanted to have a short story ready, but long and short life got in the way, and my ability to get the short story out in like the 2 hours I have before bed kind of hindered that. Anyway, thank you all for watching this long. Everybody who's commented and supported me like that, I appreciate it more than words can say. Really, only 2 comments got this video up and running. I'm spurred on by the engagement. I think it's fun. Anyway, if you do like this sort of writing and all this other stuff, let me know, because I have 2 short stories I'm planning on publishing. I'm going to commission some art for it, make it real fun. If anybody's interested. One is a not too futuristic tale about alcoholism, steroids/genetic modification, and blood sports. The other is a fantasy tale about a duo in search of family and revenge and all the weird stuff they see in between. Thanks again. See you.